As the joke goes, Black people were born to dance, but Aaron was born with two left feet. This encouraged him to learn to dance, which impacted his career journey. Do a little two step as we dive into today's episode. Hi, Aaron. Welcome to the podcast
Hello,
today.
hello. Thank you. Pleasure.
Yes. So I like to start the podcast by doing a little mental health check in. So, checking in, how is your mental health today? How are you feeling? How was your week? What's going on with you?
This week was tough for sure. Like it was, I had I guess a marathon of great weeks, and this week was not one of the better ones. But I think the thing that I've learned is that you have to make room for the days where you feel a little less you, if you may. Like
Mm.
not every day could be a 9 out of 10. Sometimes you're gonna get some fives and sixes, and that's okay. And I think that today I definitely like relished in that feeling and just accepted it and said, you know what, next week we're gonna go harder. And I'm human. So that's I think that's where I'm at right now. And lately I've been learning to accept a lot, especially things that I cannot change, things that have already happened, and just say like roll with the punches. I call it like the next play mentality. I tell my friends that like when things go wrong, if you were playing sports and you missed a bucket when you were shooting the shot, you don't worry about the fact you missed the shot. You worry about what you're going to do on the next play. So yeah, that's where we are right now. Like think about the next play.
No, yeah, I definitely agree. I know like you work in marketing, so I think like coming from also like a social media marketing background, it's like you make a plan and sometimes it doesn't go as you wanted it to go. So you have to
Mm-hmm.
just roll with the
Mm-hmm.
punches. So it's like you said, like even though it didn't go that way, you can't like wallow in it. You just gotta
Mm-hmm.
say accept it and say, okay, this is what happened. So what's next? Um,
Yep.
Also, I'm gonna ask you this later on, but you always have such good quotes. Even while I was doing research for you, I was like, he just has a way with words and a way with like things together. Even
Thank you. I appreciate
talking
that.
now, I'm like, what? Like this is all just perfect. So going into like the beginning, where did you grow up? You grew up in New York City, of course, but where did you grow up? How was it growing up in New York City and your experiences here?
Yeah, for sure. I like these questions because these are the ones you never get asked as a professional, right? Like people are always like, how did you start your journey into marketing and this and that? But like
I feel
you're
like
like you're
from
like,
the
who is
beginning.
Aaron for
Yeah, exactly.
real?
Because I feel like it builds up to how you got into marketing and what like
Mhm,
inspired that. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so born and raised in New York. I'm from Brooklyn specifically. I grew up in a single parent household. My dad he's also around, but my mother, she pretty much like raised us. I lived with her for most of my childhood, with my other four siblings. So she was a mother of five. I'm the oldest out of all my siblings. In total, I have nine actually, and I think that people are usually like, "Oh, damn," but like between the two, uh, like it's not as much as you think. So after me, my parents were like, "Yeah, this ain't gonna work," and they kind of went their separate ways. But I think what that taught me was like to care, to be a people first individual, to really have that at the epicenter of all the things that I do, and just being the older brother, feeling like I had to set the example, but also simultaneously getting those talks about like what it means to be Black in multiple spaces. Like I went to school, like in the not so great neighborhoods like East New York and things like that, where people would. I mean, nowadays gentrification, you never know where you can go. But before, there was a moment in time where you could not really, you wouldn't want to send your child to school in certain places. And I think now I'm like, people live there. That's crazy. Like by choice, but yeah, like I grew up in East New York and Flatbush. Like it was like a mixed model kind of thing. Eventually I moved to Flatbush officially with my pops when I was about like 15, 14. But before that, just being in those schools, going to school with a bunch of people who also shared similar hardship, but also being a Black man, my mom would always give me that conversation like, yo, like this, unfortunately, this might not be where it all ends. This might just be the introduction to the challenges that you have to face as you like move through your life and navigate all these things. And it stood true in some cases. They transitioned. They went from like, being careful when you walk around at night to being careful who's watching your work in the boardroom or like stuff like that, like all those things. And they share similar sentiment, but I think I picked up a lot of those skills in my younger days, like realizing like sometimes you need to have like this like not a protective shield, but keep mind of like who is in your vicinity and what their intentions are. And I think that was a big lesson I learned.
And I think also, like, as you go into the boardroom, you never know who's watching. So even the people that you think aren't watching, they're watching, and it could
Mm,
lead towards promotions or other things. So
hmm.
definitely, even though I'm not from New York, I definitely agree about like New York has changed.
Hmm.
I went to Harlem yesterday, and I was like, "There's a Levain bakery, or however you say it in Harlem." I'm like, wait, there's a Levain. What? I was like, I'm not in Harlem no more. This ain't
Yeah, yeah,
Harlem.
yeah. They,
So
they they did not come to play. They are trying to pack us up.
yo, so I'm like, where to next? I think I saw an article that said within 5 years, gentrification will be like have taken over in like the areas of
Mm,
Brooklyn. So yeah, so I love your journey of like you growing up in New York, and as a black male with things like Trayvon Martin, you have to like definitely be careful of like how you move within the community of your own community, but also just within this world. And
mm.
your mom's like wisdom of telling you like, be careful of how you move within the space. Once you got to your father's house, how did you because by that point you were 14, 15, so I'm assuming you were in high school at that
High
point, or
school.
like yeah, so you're in high school at that point. Where did you think you would be career wise? Where did you think you would be career wise?
Honestly, I think I was just taking a wild guess. Like I think in high school I was focusing on like entrepreneurship. Like I just wanted to be an entrepreneur. If you asked me about what, I had no clue, no idea. Funny enough, and I think not a lot of people in like my field particularly know this. This is one of the few times I've said this on air. Is that actually I was like a professional dancer before I went to marketing. And that was that's a huge part of my life. Like not, it wasn't like a secret. I think everyone who knows me personally knows that. I've like done a lot of stuff. Like I've danced at the Apollo, like HBO Max theaters, been on the cover of like dance magazines, like fun stuff that I guess when I was younger, I just saw it as like I'm just climbing the ranks. This is what I wanted to do. So like I had this like back end ambition of like having entrepreneurial, like having an entrepreneurial mindset and like pursuing that by way of like what I was doing in the dance community because I started throwing events there. I had like started a team, like all these things that helped me like really showcase and learn along the way. But like in terms of like a career trajectory, outside of that, that was like my focus. It was like, okay, cool. We're in school, like we're vibing. Honestly, like things are going well. I'm passing my classes. I'm enjoying dancing. I'm meeting some people I never would have met before from like all over the boroughs. And that was really that, to be honest with you. And I felt as though for me, what success felt like at that time was like making accomplishments, like going viral, air quotes, before that was really a thing, or like getting a press opportunity, or working with like a random partner. Like I worked with Sprayground before, the book bag company. So like working with people like that and getting opportunities to like have my art out there at that time was like that's what it felt like to be accomplishing my goals.
I think it's so interesting when I like do my research on my interviewees so far, and like I'll see something and go, okay, this doesn't make sense because I'll hit like a dead end in research. And I saw one of your interests was hip hop dancing, and I was like, wait, what? Like I wouldn't have, like you said, I wouldn't have thought that. So
Mm-hmm.
that's really interesting to know what, and I think you said this at the brunch too as well. But what got you into dancing?
Honestly, I didn't have no rhythm, so like we could start there. And my mom she used to like try to tell me to do like I'm Caribbean, so a little Jamaican like bogo dance. Like she told me do all that type of stuff, and I couldn't get it. I could not catch not a beat. And I remember, so in New York, there's this dance style called light feet that is a very, very strong at the center of like a lot of things central to New York. It was started here, similar to like breakdancing, like flexing, like those types of dance styles. Light feet was originally known as like getting light. It was more like the toe wop, chicken noodle soup, all that stuff. It evolved into like a much more structured dance style where they did like competitions like World of Dance, America's Got Talent, like all those things. I remember when my family had moved to the Bronx at a point, and I went to visit them because at this point I was living with my dad already. And when I went to visit them, they were like, "Hey, like did you see this new like dance or whatever the case may be?" And like I was just in awe, like watching it on YouTube. I'm like, "Yo, that's fire!" Like I wonder if I could do that. And I tried it. I was bad for a long time. And I just tried it. And then eventually I think I tried my way into having the courage to go showcase it in front of people. So I just kept trying. I said, I think I'm good enough to go show up. And I went to an actual event in the city where like all the dancers had gathered, and I had did like what we call like a solo performance. So you just dance, they record it, post it online, and all that kind of stuff. And like from there, we just kept consistent. Like that rush I felt, I wanted to keep getting that. So every weekend, that was my plans. Like I like started trimming down on my other aspects of my social life because it just became about dancing. So I would just go to events every weekend in the city, and the events were big, like 100, 200, 300 people at a time.
You sound like Chloe Bailey. I think she says that she feels the most alive when she's like on stage performing. So it sounded like for
Mhm.
you, like dancing sounded like a place where you felt like you felt alive. And it gave
It's definitely a safe space for
yes.
sure.
It's like when people work out and they say like they want that high of the serotonin of working out. So
Mhm,
dancing
mhm.
gives you that. I also love that you said that it was something that I don't want to say it scared you, but something that you weren't comfortable with. So you were trying to
Mhm.
stretch that muscle of like trying to get comfortable with
Yep.
it. And I
Yep.
think that's something we as humans have to continue to practice as we get older. Like it's okay to be a beginner at something and learn.
Yep.
That's the only way you're gonna get better. So
Yeah. 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 For sure. And it's that I've learned so much in that entire aspect of my life, like that stage, to this very moment where I can always call back to some of the things that I did then. Like even now, like between my business and even like things I'm doing at work, I'll like call on people I've met while I was dancing to help with a project, or like they need talent for something. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know somebody that does X, Y, and Z. And like I can full circle moment that very frequently based on connections that I made at like almost like well more than 10 years ago in my life now, for sure.
I think that's another thing that I love about being within the marketing, like social media influencer marketing, like PR industry is that there's so many people along your way that have different
Yep.
talents that you could
Yep.
intersect them in and just really like plug them in and make that
Hmm.
connection. That's my favorite thing. So you obviously were dancing your way through high school, then you got to college, or you got like to the next step.
Hmm.
When you first entered college, what did you decide to declare your major as? Or like what was your next steps?
So fun fact. College got spicy, I won't lie. Only because like I went, but I think I went to college with a high school mindset. Like I was like, oh yeah, like I don't have to study. It's fine. I'll figure it out. I've done it all these years. What's the difference now? Until you realize the difference is teachers aren't giving you the benefit of the doubt. Like it's either A or B. There's no in between. Like you gotta come correct at all times. You take a morning class. You chose to take that morning class. You need to be there in that morning for that class. And I think for me that was a big learning opportunity because I was just signing up for things because it seemed like the thing to do. Like college was the thing to do after high school, but I didn't find my purpose yet for going to college. I just did it because it was next on the manual or on the agenda, if you may. And eventually, my first year, I got kicked out of school because like my grades were not great. I was not taking it seriously, and I think it allowed me to like mentally reset and really ground myself in what I say like finding my true meaning for adulthood and what I want out of it. I worked at Century 21 for like a year. For those people who know Century 21, the department store. I worked in the women's shoes department, and I learned how mean people can be to you when you don't know how to answer to a question in real time. And I was like, do I really want to spend the next like and I'm like an over analyzer, like that's just who I am naturally. So when I was at that moment, I'm like 10 years down the line, like picturing myself like old and wrinkly, like walking around, like asking people like what size do you want these Cole Haan boots in, like stuff like that. And I'm like, why am I even thinking about this? Like I'm having nightmares about Vince Camuto. You know what I'm saying? Like it's crazy. So eventually I was like, okay, this is not working. And I tried to go back to school, but I had someone. I went back to the school and I had a guidance counselor who my mother actually knew. So she was like the plug at the time. She was like, "Yo, I know this person. You should speak to him." And I call him my guardian angel for another reason that I could explain after. But he stuck with me through that whole year. We wrote an appeal letter. I got back into school. Like, cause I wrote one, they denied it, and then he wrote it for me, gave me his cosign, and then they let me back in. He got me into the scholarship program. Like right after that, where like every semester when you would get, depending on your grades and all that, and as long as you're participating actively, you would get like a financial stipend for your participation. No, because he knew like what kind of family I was coming from, like, and my financial struggles as well. And it was just beautiful, like all the things he did for me. And I'll never forget how like that one moment like changed the trajectory of my life, because even going back into school from then, I was on a D's list every semester. Like I never looked back. And it was community college, so 2 year. So I learned so much there. Then I've transferred to Baruch College for my 4 year. So community was BMCC, which is that's where I actually did the Black Visionaries brunch at. And that's why that was such a pivotal moment for me, because so much of my growing up happened there. And then I went to Baruch for my 4 year degree. But even when I was at Baruch, I spent a lot of time at BMCC because I became a tutor. And I like would spend a lot of time on campus there, which was like the ideal job, low key, for someone in college, because I had a place that was quiet that I could study as my job, So that was cool to be able to do that. And also BMCC is where I found out about advertising as an industry initially. So much of like my upbringing just came from that overall experience.
So really quickly, you really thought when you were at the shoe store, I mean at Century 21, you thought in 10 years it would be old and wrinkly? 10
I ain't know, hey, black don't crack, but I was when you're 20 years old, you're not thinking about those type of statements. You're
You didn't
just
look at your
panicking.
mom or the elders in your family and was like, okay, they still look good. I should be good.
I was in a frenzy. I'm
But
like, there's no way.
I do get where you're going with that because you were just like, okay, this ain't it. We got to figure
Mhm.
this out. Because what?
I had somebody one time they asked me for a pair of shorts, and I was working the register that day. And this is anecdotal, but it's just funny and I have to share. And like they were so mad that I didn't have their shorts that they threw them. They launched them at me over the register, and like I weaved it, because like one thing New York gonna teach you is how to bob and weave. So I said, "Oh, you going crazy," But like it was funny because I was like, is this the epitome of what I will become? Like a black man behind a register getting shorts thrown at him in retail. Like all those moments were what reminded me, like, okay, this cannot be forever. And I actually even left that. I left Century 21 officially because I remember even when I tried to work part-time and do school, it was great that they turned me down, but they were like, you got to choose. Is this or school? Like they wouldn't accommodate it. And I was like, well, there's no way I'm not gonna do school. Like you kind of lost your mind with that statement. But I think, and I'm a God fearing man, so I'm not imposing my religious beliefs on anybody. But for me personally, it's like when you don't listen, God will show you. So like that's how I felt at that moment. And I
Yeah,
said, okay, I hear you loud and clear. You telling me get up and get out. Stop trying to ease my way through and just go and do it. And that's exactly what I took from that.
yeah. I think the season that I'm in my life, and just always like a repeating lesson, is that when God doesn't want you somewhere, He makes you uncomfortable. And
Mm-hmm.
you'll definitely feel it that it's like, okay, this is not it. So I'm happy
Mm-hmm.
you did it because I know a lot of friends who did work retail and go to school, and it's hard to like get off late.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Mm-hmm.
tired and you still got to submit that assignment before 11:59 or whatever.
Exactly. Exactly.
So retail is it's easy and a quick job, but sometimes it's not it while you're in school.
Mm-hmm.
One thing you did say is that you felt like after high school, college was the next step. For me, when I was working in college, I worked at the International Student Services Office, and I saw
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of them did a gap year. And I felt like in American culture, we're not taught, like, especially Black American culture, we're not taught like you could take that year to like, you just spent the last 12 years in school.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
who are you? Who's Aaron as a person before you like take the next step? And I feel like it sounds like the Century 21 experience that
That was
you,
my gap year for
yeah,
sure. For sure.
gap year.
For not by choice, but it had to happen.
But it really just showed you like your 10-year trajectory of
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be old and wrinkly and I don't want people throwing
Mm-hmm.
shorts at me. So let's get it
Mm-hmm.
together. And
Get it, yeah.
obviously from your guardian angel, you were able to really just, okay, let me lock in and figure this out and
Mm-hmm.
make this work. And clearly you did. So once you got to school, once you got back to school, you said that you realized that advertising was where you wanted your next steps to be.
Mm-hmm.
What What made you gravitate towards advertising over like any other major or like career path you could have taken?
Yeah, for sure. So originally I was a business administration major. That was like the track. They didn't have marketing as a more specific track or like advertising or anything close. And I had taken a marketing course. I thought that was cool. I had written this blog about like G Star because it was like trending at the time. And I was like, I'm into fashion and sneakers and all that, but like G Star was like super popping at that time. I'm like, yo, I'm gonna write a blog about G Star. And like my blog started going a little viral before it was a thing. So it was like on Blogger, like the actual site or whatever. It was like Google had Blogger, I think, as an extension or something. So I would do that. I would write about it. And it was cool because a lot of the work that we would do, we would have a chance to like share with the class and talk about it. And then we get to see our own metrics. And I seen it was doing well. So initially, marketing had piqued my interest. I'm like, okay, cool. This is dope. I'm feeling this. And then fast forward, I had eventually like had, how you go to college, you get your advisors, they tell you what courses to take and the whole nine, and you're like, okay, cool. I had this one advisor tell me to take an advertising course. And I was like, okay, fine, it sounds right. Took the course, fell in love with it. Like that was one of the best classes I've ever taken. It was led by a Black woman. That was another thing, which at that time, I didn't realize how big of a deal that was, but it was an advertising course taught by a Black woman. She looked out for me so much. She got me my job as a tutor on campus to help me, financially. Like she was like holding it down, Professor Jackson. But what was funny about that is that I was not supposed to be in that class. It didn't fall under my major, and my financial aid did not cover it. So like I was misadvised. I was panicking because I'm like, oh my God, like I ain't got the money to like keep spending on these classes. Like I'm trying to finish this up, trying to get on to the next thing. And I actually made, and people will be like, you crazy, but like I enjoyed it so much, I paid for that class out of pocket. And I took my regular classes in addition to that. But that class in particular was just like, it was special to me. Like I was like, nope, I'm gonna stick it through. And people in school, I know they're like, that's asinine. Like, there's no way I'm paying for a class, just because. But that was that was interesting. It was new. I felt like I knew I needed to be there. Like something in my spirit was like, oh, this is where you want to be. And I stuck it through, and it yielded a lot of opportunity by way of like her helping me, become a tutor, introducing me to other people on campus, and like all these other opportunities that came about as I was a student at BMCC at the time.
No, I think I get what you're saying. People would definitely judge and say, oh, I wouldn't have paid for that. But I think it just attests to the fact of like you really liked it and you enjoyed it. And I think when it comes to like taking that next step, sometimes you have to invest in yourself to get to where you want to be. So that just
Mm,
shows like this was you investing in yourself to get to where you are today.
mm. Yeah, and even with that, so what how I realized, you get rewarded for doing the things that feel right to you is because BMCC is a community college, City University of New York, as well as Baruch. Like they're under this larger umbrella for New York City colleges.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a program where you get an allotted amount of credits that transfer for free if you go from like a community college
Mm-hmm.
to a 4 year. And because that was like an it wasn't like dedicated to a particular like course that they offered at Baruch. They just gave the credit like as like one of my miscellaneous transferable credits. So
Mm-hmm.
eventually, while I was at BMCC, it didn't count to my major. But when I transferred to Baruch, it did count towards my credit. So
So
that all worked out anyway.
yeah, and same like you, I also did community college first, and it was the same. It's hard because I went to PR
Mhm,
at university, but at community college they don't have that as a major. It's journalism,
mhm,
but that's what you have to do to transfer over. So it's
mhm.
that weird transferization.
Yeah, exactly.
So once you finished up, you took the advertising course, you paid for out of pocket, and then you transferred over to university. How was that next level experience of being able to finally like engulf yourselves in the advertising class and not have to pay for them out of pocket?
Um, well, sorry, repeat that one more time. It cut out a little bit.
No, you're fine. I said once you finished your time at community college, your 2 year degree, and you transferred over to university, how is it when you were able to like finally engulf yourself like fully in the advertising courses that you had paid that one
Oh
time
yeah,
for?
yeah. Like
Yeah,
when I went to my 4 year, I think
yeah.
I enjoyed it. I always my theory, nobody please take this, but my theory at the time was like, you just got to do good in the majors, right? Like any other course, I could be okay with a B, a C, if it ever came down to that. Like accounting, which I'm good at math, so I did better in accounting, but I was okay with whatever way it would go because I was like, this isn't my like long-term goal. I'm trying to be in marketing, advertising. So it was like all the advertising courses I had gotten, like straight A's, a B plus if I had a bad day, but like mostly A's all the way through. And I enjoyed it and I knew it was what I wanted to do. I actually had a feeling I wanted to do PR before that. So I had a PR internship prior to. It was not my vibe. I'll just be honest. It was not hitting. Like I tried it. I learned so much about what I was capable of, what interested me, but also it taught me the things that I was like, yeah, this is not really my thing, and that's okay. Um, but I also had learned that in addition to that, you go to internships to do just that. I was just telling someone on like the Black Visionaries team just recently, like internships are for trial and error, right? Like you're intended to make mistakes, you're intended to not know things and learn what you do want to do, what you don't want to do. It's okay if you go to an internship and you leave it and you're not enthused because that was the point of it being an internship and not your full-time job, right? Like so you can learn what you want in your full-time job. So I had taken a I went to a PR internship at a company and it wasn't the greatest experience. I did learn a good amount. It also that was the first time I had did improv. A part of our internship was for all the interns to do an improv session amongst each other, which helped me sharpen my public speaking, which I didn't realize at that time. I started to get an affinity for speaking in public, which I've done it before in other cases, like by way of like alumni, mentorship, like stuff like that. But that was the first time where I was like, huh, okay, this is because they would explain it like this is to help you with your public speaking and presentation skills and all this. And I was like, okay, this is cool. I like I'm relatively funny, I think. So we could do some improv. I could get into that. And that was it was really, really, really unique. But then walking away from that, I went back to Baruch for my last year because I did that internship as a junior. And my last year, I was like, okay, I was not feeling this. What are we gonna do with this next year? Like, what's the plan? Because now we got to get it together. And they offered a advertising campaign course for the NSTAC competition. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's an advertising competition that I think the AAF runs it. Sorry if I'm getting the company wrong, but I think it's the AAF. And they basically facilitate this competition amongst a bunch of schools. It was like the second or third year they had done it. And I had went into that, and I was like one of the heads for like media. I had a professor who would just talk about like, you should try out media, like if it's what you're interested in. I really thought I wanted to do strategy. But he was like, it's harder to get into strategy. Should go to media. It's a young person's game, and strategy people are usually more senior. And I let this mediocre white man like tell me what my career trajectory should look like. And I'm like, there nowadays, I look in the mirror as someone who like an associate strat director now. I'm like, why did I listen to this man? But at the time, that's the seniority that's available, that's the perspective, that's within your reach. So you take that and you're like, okay, you know what? You know better than me. I ain't worked in advertising a day in my life, and you seem to know what you're talking about. So let me aim for media. And then I had applied for the 4A's mate program because I had met Al Benoit, who was a mentor of mine, life coach, big brother, the whole nine. And he was like, yo, apply for mate. I applied. And after that, I had just I fortunately got in. I was happy. I had went into a media slash comms planning internship at Wieden and Kennedy, which is one of the bigger ad agencies in like our field. So I was like, okay. Funny enough, I had no idea what Wieden and Kennedy was at the time, and this is like a holy grail agency, and people are like, oh my god, like you're at Wieden and Kennedy. I was like, okay, like I have an internship. That's dope. Like I won't be unemployed this summer. Like that was my bar. Have something to do this summer. Where it was at, cool. But I didn't. I was not. And I've done my research. I knew about some agencies. I just had not come across Wider, and that's fine. But it also allowed me to walk into that with no expectations. Like I wasn't like drinking Kool-Aid. Like oh my god. And I'm not. I'm sorry. I love the industry. The work we do is dope. but I'm not like foaming at the mouth over any company because I think that it's the people that make it and not the name. So that was for me what that perspective was. And I walked in, I enjoyed it. I had an amazing team I worked with, and I loved that experience. And it instilled a lot of personal values to me, and just around like understanding how I can do the work and be myself, and then the importance of doing that. And I went through some moments after where I didn't feel like I could be as authentic in the work, and I would refer back to that moment and say, okay, I need to get back to that. Like that's why I felt like I had the most opportunity to rise to my full potential. So how do I get back to that? And now that's where I guess full circle where I feel like I'm now at that stage in my career where I'm getting back to like how I first came into the industry, where I was like, I know I can make this change.
You said a lot, and there's so many different directions I want to go with the conversation.
My bad, I be doing that.
No, 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 no. This is really good. Like this is, trust me, this that wasn't like a bad thing. That was a really good thing. Um, I definitely agree with like everything you said. It's hard, I think, when you're in college and like you said, you have an advisor who tells you like do this, not that, because that could be their likes and not yours. But it's also like you don't really get a chance to experience it until you get into the career field to really know what you like and don't like. And I think even though you're in advertising and I'm more in public relations, I think it's still hard because our career paths, it changes so much. Social media in the past few weeks, we have Twitter, Spill, and Threads. Which
Right,
one is it? So I think it's
right.
that just goes to show you, but also I think it just goes to show like PR and advertising. People always like to lump us and marketing all together, but we're all like just so different in the way that we pull the
Mm-hmm,
audience towards a product or towards a whatever the case may be. So that's
mm-hmm,
another thing. Two, I was so upset when I was in college. I didn't hear about MAPE until literally my last semester in university. I'm just like, I wish
mm-hmm.
I would have known about it sooner. So for people
Yep.
that don't know about MAPE who may be pursuing a marketing field or advertising field, can you explain what MAPE is exactly?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So MAPE is the Multicultural Advertising Internship Program. It was started by the 4As. It's been around for longer than I've existed as a human being, if I'm not mistaken. They are the way the program works is they take juniors, seniors, and graduate students. And you submit an application, you go through like a video submission, if I'm not mistaken, resume, answer some questions. And then they select a final pool of interns for the summer. And then after they'll notify you, you go through like, you also go through, I think, a round of interviews, or one or two rounds, I can't remember, but you do go through an interview round as well after your application is submitted. And that is followed by an actual assignment to an agency. The cool part about that is the agencies kind of like they function like NFL draft style. Like they get this roster of all these interns. They're looking at your stats, like what you do, what you're interested in, and they're literally like fighting over you, like trying to get you. They got to log in at a portal at a certain time, and they're like going to bat. And like they don't know who got who. They just know they see the name and they want this person, and it's I didn't know that until after I interned, and I was like, damn, like somebody fought to get me. That's amazing. Like it was such a confidence boost to be at that stage of your career. And then you end up having, you have your one. It's really only one choice, to be honest, and then you apply or accept or deny. If you deny, unfortunately, you're unable to do the internship program because there's just like so many people that have applied. And to be honest, like it's more about getting the experience and not being picky with where you end up. Like that's how the program functions. And there's so much more in the MAPE experience besides like just the company that you get by way of like virtual workshops and the community and the whole nine. Like I would always tell people, like, don't even worry about that. That's an aspect of it. That's not the full experience. But yeah, that's the rundown. I damn near sound like a spokesperson, which I am. I love the MAPE community. Those are my people for sure.
No, yeah, and I think to your point of like you got into the internship you got into some people was like, oh my gosh, you got into this, but it's like you never know sometimes if you didn't get your dream company, the company you end up going to maybe the company that
Mm-hmm.
you needed to
Mm-hmm.
experience the certain culture or certain experience and you may end up falling in
Mm-hmm.
love with it. So I think I agree with you. Like I've worked at some pretty big companies and people are like, oh my God, you work for this company. And it's like, sometimes it'll be like, trust me, it's not all you think it's cracked up to be. And sometimes it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, I work for this company. Like I'm not trying to downplay it, but it's like, I'm not trying to make it bigger than what it is. Like at the end of the day, I'm here to do a job and that sometimes like,
It's like that just because I work here and I have this title, and I wish the industry understood this too. Like the name of the company does not equate to the skill set of the employee, right? And I think we harp on that so frequently. Like this person that came from like X tech company is intended to be a better employee than this person that came from like small startup spot. But the skill sets can be drastically different in favor of the person from the startup. You don't know that because you haven't thought to give them a chance just by a prior connotation, which had nothing to do with them. It's based on where they work, and that's an unfair bias, you know. So,
and I think it goes back, like taking it a step further, like back. I think it also goes into choosing like what university or school you decide to graduate from. It's like, oh, they went here, they did this, and it's like just because they went to this school doesn't mean that they're less qualified or more qualified. Like,
oh yeah, I have so much issues with that because I mean, I didn't go to like the flashy, like the Syracuse's, University of Texas, you know, like I didn't go to those schools, but I went to a school that I felt like taught me what I needed to do, gave me an opportunity to really relish in real life, which is like juggling real life and going to school and commuting as I do now, going to work, juggling things. Like it mirrored what my reality is in a lot of ways. And at first, I would almost be like, damn, I wish I went away. Like I have those regrets. And there's some things that you kind of still hold on to it because it's always a thought in the back of your mind. But I'm sitting next to all these people who went to all these schools, and the only difference is debt. And I'm okay with that. You know, like you could have your 60, 70K debt, whatever that look like. I'm gonna stick with my zeros, you know, and that's cool with me. But and I don't mean that as like a oh, that's the only thing. But I generally mean like not to devalue what your experiences were just by like the name of a university you attended, because I think we sell ourselves short on our capabilities because of the perspectives of others.
yeah, and that's sometimes the unfortunate part about like taking that next step. It's like I feel like people factor that into their decision. It's like, oh, well, people think if I work here, if I go to this
Mm-hmm.
school, or if
Mm-hmm.
I'm, around these things, or it's just do it, get the experience because you may end up where you want to be by doing what
Right.
you're doing to get there.
Right.
Um, okay, so you said something that really struck to me. You said you went through moments where you couldn't be authentic. When you and I hope I'm not butchering exactly what your statement was, so please do
I
clarify.
mean that was the gist of it for sure.
Okay, okay. Um, what did you mean by that? Did you mean that you went through moments where you couldn't be authentic? Was that as a black male? Was that as someone who could show up and really just like give your ideas and perspective of how you should proceed you should proceed on a project? What was your meaning of that statement?
I mean, I would say it was a mix of both. I think uh being a black man, I like carried a burden in the beginning of my career to hope that I was perceived a certain way. Like I would try to carry myself as like, you know, super high energy, try to smile for everybody and like all those things because you don't want to be perceived as, you know, the angry black man because that's the stereotype and it's played out. And I painted that picture, I realized for myself, and nobody had that perspective. And if they did, that's not my baggage to carry. But I think I carried that a lot in my early career because I felt like I was so new. And just the things that I learned growing up, and kind of like take an ode back to my experiences, like learning that growing up. I also had to acknowledge that, you know, my parents grew up in a very different generation. I think this generation of marketers is a lot more realistic by nature. And like I'm gonna tell you when you're tripping, regardless of your title, like it doesn't matter to me. Like if you say something out of pocket, it was very much out of pocket. We would discuss that. And I think that I've had to learn to be okay with, you know, I'm not them, and that's fine. I value what I was taught, and that's an important part of my life and my upbringing. But my perspectives are my perspectives for that reason, right? And that was like the initial aspect of it. And then in terms of like being able to share my perspective in the work that I was doing, that was really why I went into strategy because I think when I was on the media agency side, it was dope. Like, you know, I enjoyed who I worked with most of the time, not all the time. And I also like I felt like we had cool perks. I got to do a lot of things that I just didn't have the money to do. Like, let's just be real. I couldn't afford to do some of the things they would take us to do. So there were a lot of experiences that I got at an early stage in my life. But I think that after that, I started having ideas and like my creative gear started to turn a bit more frequently. And I'd want to share that perspective, but it wasn't my role. And then I actually, so when I was at MediaCom, because I went from White and Kennedy to OMD, which is a media agency. Then I went to MediaCom, which is another media agency. And when I worked there, I had actually founded their first ever ERG. And like I was like, oh snap, really? Like we the first ones. Me and this dude named CJ. He's like one of my best friends. Like that's my guy for sure. And like we were talking, and I'm like, yo, like we should start ERG. And we're talking to the head of DEI, and she's like, yo, like so do it. We're like, wait, so what's the process? Like, how do you start an ERG? And then we found out you literally just do it, right? Like there's no guidelines to doing, so you do something for your people and you figure it out along the way. But the framework is y'all. Like y'all are the ones who set the precedent. And we had did that. And like we would just find ways to foster community and do for our folks in the agency, and it started curating events and spaces. And then it sparked the creation of other ERGs, i.e. for like women, for LGBTQ plus people, and the whole nine. I think what was cool about that was just that it also showed how sometimes it only takes one person to take that leap of faith to inspire others, but also your capabilities or your possibilities are endless, right? And you can do that. And I even owe that moment to an experience I had because I had attended a conference and I went to a panel where it was everyone who was on that panel was not a DEI professional, but they championed DEI in their day to day. Like it was all about how do you push for inclusivity and like making change when it's not your day job? Because you always go to that battle of like, do I need to go into a diversity or HR role to make change? Do I have to give up the thing that I also like to do this? And that inspired me to be like, yo, right. Like at the time I was enjoying media planning. I'm like, I'm good at it. So why stop? Why do I feel like I have to give this up to make space for people? So we went and founded the ERG, and that inspired so many other things I did after the fact. But I moved to strategy because to your earlier point about like being able to share my perspective and like authentically speak to it, I felt like I could only do that with my community, and it didn't matter to the work I was doing because my job was to make sure media went live on time and it was efficient financially, right? So all that was cool, but when I had a creative idea, it's like, thank you for your perspective, not your job. So I wanted to get to a place where I was able to share my perspective, and it was bad. Not only mattered, but it was important. Like you needed my perspective to do the work. So that's the reason I pivoted to strategy. In addition to some like really emotional and strong conversations I had with my peers and friends who like they just spoke life into me. They told me like a lot of things I needed to know. So yeah.
Yeah, I think going back to the first statement you made, like about like the moments when you felt like you couldn't be like you couldn't be authentic. I think I recently struggled with that with one of the contracts that I recently had, and I think I had to learn like you're meant to be in the room, like you're in the room for a reason. And it sounds
Mm-hmm.
like you
Mm-hmm.
learned that like I'm in the room for a reason. I don't have to be
Right.
a prototype of what I think they want me to be. I'm here
Right.
because of who I am and what I bring
Right.
to the table and the perspective. So I love that you were finally like able to get to that point and really just get to the point of where you are in your career today. And then going towards you creating the ERG group, that is huge.
Mm-hmm.
I
Thank
didn't
you.
create an ERG group at one of the companies I was with, but I was part of like building it up to what it became to be. And I agree with you. I think what I took from what you said is that a lot of people didn't realize that they didn't need permission to create like a community within the company.
Mm-hmm. And I think corporate America makes you feel like you need to, right? Like it makes you feel like you need to go up the ladder, send an email, with a deck, with some proof, from proved out points and some data around why you need community. And then you're like now I'm at that point where I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, is this a joke? But before that, I definitely felt like it needed to be this fully formalized thing.
Because I think it's like you said, like whoever you went to and you ask them like, hey, what do we need to do? They're just like, just create it. It's like,
Mm.
oh, that's all it takes. So segueing, it sounds like you forming the ERG group at MediaCom led to you creating your own personal brand of Black visionaries, or no,
Maybe,
not.
maybe.
If
That's
I'm too,
a
I'm ahead.
very
Of
a very hot take. No, it's true
okay.
though. It had a lot to do with that. I think it was a culmination of things, right? Like I've done the Ag Color Futures program, which then helped me get involved with the Ag Color community. And I owe a lot of just like the connections I've made, the community support I've gotten, just the ambition that I've been able to really flush out for myself, like what I want to do, understanding what kind of person I want to be, how I want to pour back into the industry, to connections I've made in Ag Color, my people. And I think that pushed me even further to realize like sometimes you just got to do, like, ask for permission and ask for forgiveness and not permission. And that's where I'm at. And this is that season for me. It's been that season for a couple of years. But the way Black Visionaries was started was basically I did the first brunch, which was 2022. I invited a lot of my like professional network of people. So Ag Color, people I've known since like I grew up with who were doing some dope work. People who I worked with at the current job, people at the past jobs, like just a bunch of Black professionals. But I only had a capacity of 30. So I was like, this needs to be a very pointed 30 people. Like I need to know who's gonna be here. And I also like I had gotten a stipend from like an award. I had received the Billy Davis Award by way of the 4 Years Mate program. And when I had received it, like I was like immediately, I need to do something for Black creators or just Black people in general. Like that was where I wrote about doing that with the money. And my like ambition never falls. I'm getting ecstatic about it because like that was like, yo, we're gonna do this. It's happening. I almost didn't do the brunch so immediately because I have analysis paralysis. And it happens so frequently because I'm like so in the details, like things need to be perfect to a T. And life just don't work that way. But I had to learn, and I think that experience is a different lesson for me too. But I remember talking to one of the people on the Black Visionary team, Eddie, who was like one of my very close friends, my roommate, like all the things. And like he was like, yo, like what's stopping you from doing this brunch? Like besides the fact that you choose not to. So I just like went full steam ahead. I went and did it. I started planning it. Like I'm hitting people up. I'm trying to find like a caterer, and like event production folks. Like, oh, and I'm like, hey, I don't have much money, but I really want to do this thing for Black people. Like, please help me. Like begging, pleading, even. And yeah, like it was amazing. Like everyone had came that I had invited, which was special to me. But it showed me like, okay, the community has faith in what I'm trying to do. And all I wanted to do was give people who are actively doing a space to be appreciated, because we do so much all the time, and we forget to sit back and say like, yo, you know what? Damn, I did that. Or you don't have someone to tell you you did that, right? And the importance of like not just people giving you your flowers, but knowing how to give yourself your flowers in another form of grace is such a special thing that we're not taught to do, because we're told like just keep your head down, get the work done. Sometimes you got to breathe and say it's okay. I'm happy I did this, relish in the moment, and then you could plan the next thing. But take a moment to give yourself gratitude, right? And I wanted to force people basically to do that and talk about like their career goals, aspirations. But the way it was set up, similar to this year's brunch, was they all came in. I split them up. I'm like, I know these people need to meet other people because there's so many dope Black people across different fields. So we did the brunch, and like someone came up to me like, hey, so this needs to be a thing like forever. Like it can't like stop. Because for me, it was like I'm from Brooklyn. Jay-Z has Roc Nation brunch. I'm inspired. Yeah, 100%. Like I'm like Jay-Z has Roc Nation brunch. This is like the vibe that I'm going for. And I like, why can't we have a version of that like for Black, not just creators, but professionals at scale who can't go to the random, hip hop cultural figure brunch yet, So that was what really sparked that. And they were like, okay, so yeah, this is not ending. Sorry to tell you, but you gotta figure something out, because we need this community to stay intact. And it turned into people working with each other on like personal projects. That was beautiful to see, like seeing people who didn't know each other before the brunch, like interacting online. Like I would be like almost like low-key like Big Brother aesthetic, like, oh my God, this is cool to see. Like, but watching it really inspired me the second go around for the brunch to expand it and like have everybody bring a plus one for this go around, which is how it kind of turned out, as well as like adding new components like the speakers, and like newer icebreaker formatting. So like I'm always excited, but yeah, bringing it back to the main point, because I always get passionate about Black visionaries, but like that, yeah, like to the main point, it definitely was inspired by not just that ERG, but I also like when I moved to my next role, I immediately like in my first week, I was like, who runs the Black ERG here? And like I had eventually joined as a co-chair and I was leading that. And then I started to realize this is all cool, but my qualm with ERGs is the work is dope. I personally do not enjoy having to ask people who don't look like me for permission to do things for people that look like me. Like I'm validating why my community needs certain things and you just will never get it. So if you say no, there's nothing I can do to convince you because you just don't get it, right? So I wanted to create something where I call the shots. And like I know the community needs this. I can wake up and address it and not have to seek layers of approval or send an email internally and blah, 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 blah. Like this is what's happening right here, right now. So yeah, that's what Black Visionaries is here for. And what's special is like it's not my ideas, it's everybody's ideas. Like I have a team of people and they come to me like, hey, we should do this. I'm like, let's do it. Let's figure it out. And it's more of an empowerment network than anything. Like how do we bring people together and allow them to bring their perspectives to fruition, especially like if it the general mold is like democratizing access to resources and information. So if you want to do that, this is the place for you to be.
I'm so happy you said that it's like the Rock Nation, like it's a level before the Rock Nation brunch because I don't know if you saw Issa Rae's show, The Sweet Life,
Yeah, yeah.
and
I
Thailand.
actually know Thailand.
Oh,
She
yay.
didn't make with me.
Oh, okay. So then, yeah, I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
that reminds me of the same thing. Of
Hmm.
course, you guys, its visions are both, it's the same vision, but just executed differently. But I think they're
Hmm.
both amazing events. Um, yeah, I love, also, I don't want you to apologize for like talking, like that's your point of view being
Yeah,
here.
yeah, all
And
good,
I
all
just love
good.
like learning more about like how Black visionaries came about. And just like having experienced it, but also just like seeing how you were able to grow it from 1 year to the next year. Like that's just
Hmm.
amazing. And I think also your friend just being that person to push you where it's like the only thing that's stopping you is you. Like
Right,
get to it
right,
and look at what you've been able to accomplish with just in two events,
right.
like two brunch events. I think that's just amazing. Um, going back a little bit, I don't want to grace over this moment. Like you said, you won the 4A's MidCan World Group Billy Davis Award in 2021, but you also were named 2021 Maper to Watch. So both of those awards combined, can you just talk about like the importance of them and how they like I know you talked about the Black Visionary Brunch, but also like how they changed the trajectory of your career, and if in any way.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the closest trajectory adjustment was definitely with the Billy Davis Award. I think the Maker to Watch, they kind of work together, right? And I think for me, it was like awards are I don't do them as like it's not a, what's the word? Like an opportunity for me to be braggadocious or like for me to show off like, yeah, I got so-and-so award. It's more like, I care about this community so much that these are the stamps of approval that I'm okay with getting because I want to show y'all like I'm here for the long haul, right? And like, this is my opportunity to invest. And I think another thing too is like, I'm a very like individual contributor minded person at times where like in my industry the Cannes Lions and the pencils and all that, they're cool, they're important, they are very important for your career growth, but they don't have your name on it all the time, and like what are the things that I can show my kids, like in my house, in my home. I can show my mom like, hey, look at X, Y, and Z, and that she can touch it and like see how real it is. Like those are the things that I find important. So it's more of a like I'm doing the work, and it's like my opportunity to say, let me shoot my shot and see where it goes because I care. And a lot of these applications for me, like when I apply for an award or someone submits me for one, it's usually rooted in the fact that I have a value that aligns with that organization. And it's not a vanity thing, which I think people do apply for awards for vanity. But that's not my vibe. I think there are a lot of awards that you can get that they'll mean nothing to some people. They're just like another thing to hang up on the wall. And that's not me. Like everything I want to hang up, it has a particular importance in my life and it's special to me. So it's empowered me to do that. And I think that's what they are for me. If anything, is like a reminder to keep going and keep doing. And that, like I said earlier, like possibilities are endless. And you'll always be a work in progress, and that's okay. But as you're continuing on that journey, don't be afraid to collect your flowers.
And I think it attests to the type of person you are where you move with purpose. Like you don't do something like you said just to do it. You do it because
Mhm.
it brings purpose and value back into your life. And yes, we need to collect our flowers. I feel like
Mhm.
that's something within the Black community that I know I still wrestle with, and I know other people within my ecosystem wrestles with. But it's definitely important to find ways that we're like collecting our flowers and actually like taking time to look back and say like,
Mhm.
look at what I've accomplished. Like I've done a lot.
Right.
So that way we don't face burnout and things like that. The other award that I want to talk about that you received is in 2020. You were named Mr. Ad Color 2020, and I know that you, or I believe that you also
Oh,
sit
2022. Yeah, Mr.
22.
Icon.
Sorry, 2022. Sorry,
All
2022.
good. I was like, damn, did I get that? Did I miss
No,
something?
no, yeah, it was 2022. 2022. But also you sit on the Ad Color as a chairperson, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Well, yeah. This will hopefully this comes out after the announcement. But all good. Yeah, so I'm co-chair of the Ad Color Advisory Board. I am basically one of the people, one half of the team. I say one third because we have another like chief of staff member of the team who oversees the overarching Ad Color Futures program, all the functions by way of like on the ground, learning and development, their hackathon experience, their onboarding process, as well as like what it looks like to engage the alumni community overall. For me, it's special because I was a future in 2018. And I've like at that moment, me and all my peers, I call them like they're like my 39 other siblings. We had a class of 40, and we were like our 39 siblings. But like it was a lot more than I anticipated because I walked into that, and you'll learn that about me in general is like I try not to have too high expectations with things because I think when you make expectations, you make room for disappointment. And I'm just like, go with the vibe, like be a little more amiable. Like not everything needs to be too rigid. There are some things in my life that I'm not as amiable about, i.e., what detergent I use for my laundry, and that's okay. But but I do think that in those cases, I'm okay with just like going with the vibe and figuring out where it goes. And honestly, since then, I was like, okay, I need to pour back into this community immediately. Like it was like clockwork. Following year, came back on board as like an ambassador. The year after that, they needed a volunteer to help out with some stuff, and I was helping. And then they were like, "Yo, like you're doing such amazing work. Uh, we need some help on the hackathon team. You want to be an advisory board member? Join the advisory board." Following year after that, I actually just raised a hand to co-lead the learning and development arm of it, which I did that for 2 years. And that was like just shaping all things around their programming and like their experience on the ground and like creating a curriculum that fit the world that they were living in. And that was special because like I'm all about learning and development and like upskilling people and helping them like really navigate their career. So I was like, hell yeah, let's do it. Fast forward to this moment now, and basically it was like a promotion, if you may. But yeah. I'm excited. We've done some pretty great work. I'm looking forward to seeing who this year's futures are going to be, and also just bringing it all to life.
Whew, that's a lot to just hear that you do all of this stuff and like your growth within it. We kind of talked about this before we started like the interview. You do a lot. You have a full-time job, you're
Mm-hmm.
operating Black Visionaries, you're still involved with Mapers, right? Because Mapers,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you're still involved with Mapers.
I'm me and my mate mentee after this.
Okay, so you're still involved with Mapers. You're also involved with Ad Color. The time that I met your mom at the brunch, I can tell that you from my perspective, you're definitely still
Mm-hmm.
connected with your mom. You're a family man.
Mm-hmm.
I think your siblings have like children, so you're an uncle also, and you have friends.
Yep.
How are you balancing it all? What? Oh, actually, I don't like to use the word balance. How are you managing it all? What's the
Mm-hmm.
secret?
The secret. The secret is to say no sometimes, and like realize you don't owe everybody an explanation. To be honest, that's the reality of it. I think the issue is when you take on all these things, we don't communicate what we can and cannot do. We just say yes to everything. And I think I've said yes to things, but I also have done it with guardrails, and also I've had to learn I'm not the best at everything. Like if you want to get something done, find someone who knows how to do it better than you. Because the time you're going to spend trying to learn how to do it is time you can spend doing something else. Right. And like that's where, like, I think that was the biggest lesson with Black Visionaries. I'm by no means the best person on the team I'm on. I'm just the one who started this idea. But there are people who I know are smarter than me that I'm working with, whether it's like from a strategy lens, whether it's from a content lens or creative ideation, direction, copywriting, like all these skill sets. I'm not good at all these things. So let me go find the people who know what they're doing. Like I genuinely admire my team. Like I look to them for inspiration to see what they're doing because it's just like such an ensemble of dope people. And that's something I've carried in every other facet of my life. And then in terms of my family, I think it's just family and friends, similar point for me, like checking in with people, right? Like if you can't physically be there, it doesn't take much to get on a phone call. Like I'll cherish like 10, 15 minutes on the phone with a sibling of my mom's over like thinking about the fact that I can only talk to them for 15 minutes, so let me not call them, right? Like those things matter. And this time you'll never get back. So just like making that time, a simple text check-in. My friends will laugh, but like I'm a crazy texter. And even some of my friends are like, yo, you be on the phone like clockwork, like it's nothing, like your phone always ringing. But if I have the time, I'll talk to everybody for a bit. Like I don't mind because I think for me that's how my cup gets filled. Like I'm a socialite. I ain't gonna lie. We're not gonna sit here and cap. That's okay. But I think I've also had to learn to give myself a break. And that's where the coming no comes in. And saying no comes in. I'm like, yo, all right, this Saturday, I need to myself. I just go lock myself in my room. I get on my game. I chill. I come back to you on Sunday, recharge. Or Sundays, I'm recharging so that Monday I wake up fresh and just doing stuff like that. And like with my full-time job, because I very much am fully, working on a day-to-day at an agency and doing work, I think what's important is setting boundaries, like like before I got hired, I set a lot of boundaries. Like these are all the things I'm involved in from X time to this time, as noted, y'all got me. When I'm here, I'm here. I'm gonna kill this. Every project I touch. When you start to seep into these like later evenings and all that, we're gonna have to talk because I do have external obligations. But the work I get, you're gonna get my best foot forward every time, and that's okay.
Wow, that's beautiful to hear. I definitely think like I'm definitely learning the boundaries part. Just because sometimes you set those boundaries, but people still want to push to see,
Oh,
can I
they always do. They always
like nudge?
you got a quick 15 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like,
No, I do
no, I
not.
don't. I
I do not at
really
all.
don't. So that's been hard for me to do. And I think I'm not even gonna lie and cap on it. I think sometimes hold on.
You good. You good. That's the essence of New York City. Let it free. Let it free.
It really is. That's why I was like, I live on a very busy street. At least once a day, at least not even, at least 5 times a day. But yeah, I will cut that part out. Yes, as we were saying, yeah, I think that's the hard part. And I think I'm not even gonna cap, and I don't want to speak for all women, but I do think that sometimes as a woman, people tend to like push it even further. Like, how far can we really go with this? And they don't take your
Mm,
no as no.
mm.
So, because I don't know if you ever saw the video or an example where people say men and women like write emails differently. So it's like
Mm.
men just get to the point. But if I write an email like a male, people say I'm dry. So it's like I don't know what to do. Um,
I actually I've never heard that, but I guess I'm not gonna say I understand because I don't understand, but
yeah,
I can I can perceive what that may
yeah,
sound like what people are trying to say. I don't agree. I think that um I just think it's internal bias that people haven't worked past, right? And like I think brevity is important no matter what gender you're coming from. Like I'm a get to the point type of person. The reason why I get to the point is because I think we draw things out because we feel like we owe people an explanation. And that's the thing. Like as a Black professional, you feel like you need to validate everything you do. Like, why are you signing off at 3 p.m. today? Because I need to, I have a family emergency. Like, no, you don't gotta lie. I have an obligation. That's the extent of my business you need to know. It doesn't matter if my friends wanted to link up and go to an early dinner or something like that. That's a personal obligation. Did my job get done? Yes or no? What you needed from me is done. Don't worry about where I'm going to be. And I think like those are the boundaries you need to set because I feel like we put the pressure on ourselves to explain everything we do for people that don't give us that same courtesy. And also, some people, they're naturally oversharers, and that's okay, but that's your chosen discussion point to have with your team. I don't need to do what you do. Just because you're telling me what you did all weekend and how you went to your fifth wedding and it was amazing. I'm not going to tell you how when I was in Cabo with the squad, it was lit and we were like turned up and like somebody like took a shot like over the bar counter, like like crazy stuff like that. Like, that's not your business.
Work is work and my personal life is my personal life. That's basically what it
Mm-hmm.
is. Like the
Mm-hmm.
boundary is set. No, definitely. I'm in that phase of my career path now. It's like this is the boundary and that's what it is.
Right.
So you kind of touched on this, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. How do you manage your mental health and your self-care as a Black man in marketing and just in general in the industry? And with all the things that you have going on?
I would say I wouldn't say I do great all the time. Like I think I'm learning as I go. The last, well, I think COVID particularly was like the most transformative moment of my life because you were forced to be home. You were forced to like live in your thought. And like I would go out, I guess, as a means. I didn't realize this, but I would go out as a means to navigate like all the crazy things happening in my personal life. And it gave me a chance to just get away from it until I finally ended up in the house by myself with my thoughts. And I'm like, yeah, this is a terrifying place to be. But now I think I've gotten to this stage where I'm okay with whatever's going on up here. I have like tactics like, okay, cool. Well, first of all, breathe. Second of all, go into nature. Like you don't got to spend money to get away from your problems. Find things that make you happy. One thing that I've learned, and I think someone said it a while ago, is like, think about a thing you used to do as a kid that would make you happy and do it. And like, I didn't think about that. And I realized as a kid, I mean, I still do like gaming, but like as a kid, I loved gaming, like loved it. And I think there's this perspective that if you have certain hobbies, you're not serious about, like your grind and like you're not an adult or like things like that. And I was like, yo, if it made me that happy, it was similar to like dancing, right? Like if it made me that happy, why does it matter what other people's opinions are of it? So I just started doing things that like give me that moment of like not just moments like amounts of time of exhilarating moments or opportunities to create to have community, talk to people. Like when I'm gaming, I'm not gaming by myself usually. I'm like on a headset talking to my family and whatnot. So like those are things that I kind of do. I'm also like I'm recharged just by talking to people sometimes. Like when I talk to my close friends and I'm catching up on what's going on, we laughing, we kicking it. I love binging shows. Like I have a full toolkit now. I think that's what's important. It's like I went from like I don't know what to do. Oh my god, I'm stuck at home to all these different things. And I also definitely am an advocate for just like checking in with yourself, like taking stock, asking yourself like why, what's going on, and if you can't figure it out, write it down, put it on paper, and just reflect on it at a different time.
That's so ironic you say that because one thing I'm trying to implement is like weekly, almost like solo date nights with myself and like just
Mm-hmm.
find different things to do. Cause I'm sure you probably saw the Brooklyn Public
Mm-hmm.
Library thing with Jay-Z. So I'm
I'm
like
trying to go do that very
trying to go
soon.
to.
Very
So I'm
soon.
like, that would be a great thing just to get out and see like what were things I did as a kid. I always was at museums. So what was it about museums that, like really just
Mm-hmm.
gave me
Mm-hmm.
that spark or that like high, I guess you could say. So
Mm-hmm.
let me go back to doing things that I love or finding things that I may
Right.
not know that I love.
Right.
So yeah, I definitely love everything you say. You have a full toolkit. I'm gonna use that now. I'm building my toolkit or
Yeah,
rebuilding
you
it.
should. You should. And
You have to.
you're gonna be adding and removing the rest of your life, right?
Yeah.
Things that serve you today might not serve you tomorrow, and that's fine.
And I think that's something that we have to learn, like everybody, not just black, white, or whatever. I think like it's never going to be 100% perfect, but you
Mm-hmm.
have to like, I think it's the way you started. You said my day wasn't a 10 out of 10, but the 5 out of 10s are still fine because not every day is going to be perfect. So I think like your toolkit is never going to be 100% perfect. It's
Mm-hmm.
you just
Mm-hmm.
continuing to learn yourself and see what works and what doesn't work and
Right.
what
Right.
to do out there or whatever the case may be. So
Yeah.
Um,
Agreed.
so going into some fun questions. From my research, you seem to like quotes. Like I said at the beginning of the interview, you have a way with words, in my opinion. You almost are like the J. Cole or like a Kendrick Lamar
Hey,
to me.
that's my favorite rapper.
Okay, good.
So
So
that's so
I
funny.
love J. Cole.
Yeah.
What's one quote that you live by and why?
Um, never dim your light for anyone. Tell them to put some shades on. That's the one I like the most for sure. I think I because I started off feeling like I needed to like be less me, like walk into a room and then shrink aspects of myself. And then I got to this point where I'm like, yo, you know what? Nah, like I'm gonna pull up with my earrings in my ear, Jordans on my feet. It's hot. I'm wearing shorts to the office because it's too damn hot to be wearing these like Dockers and all that. Like we're chilling, like learning all aspects of me are what make me me. And that's what makes the work good because the work involves Aaron's perspective. So bring Aaron to that. And then secondarily, just thinking about like the importance of access. I think not everybody deserves full access to you. Um, and that's okay, right? Like access is a choice. It's not being inauthentic, it's being accessible. And I think when you learn to decipher what amount of access you want to give people, you'll live a very happy life. You'll be chilling.
Yeah, like I'm taking a social media break and I think I realized how much my Instagram is not like my Instagram, it's very professional
Mhm.
because being off of Instagram and seeing the people that I talk to on a day to day versus when I'm on it, it's like these are the people that I need to give like my full access to, or these are people who are
Mhm.
like my friends versus these are
Mhm.
people who are like we're networker friends or
Mhm.
like corporate
Mhm.
or whatever the case may be, or industry friends. So that's definitely true.
Yeah, for sure.
So where do you get your way with words, if I can ask her? Because you have such a way with words.
Where do I get it? I don't know. I think I'm I'm just a people person. I think I've learned by listening. To be honest with you, like that's the best thing I can say. Like I can speak evidently by way of this interview. I can speak a lot if I need to, but uh, I I like to listen. I like to understand people where they're coming from, and I'm very empathetic by nature. And in listening, you learn a lot about people and the world that you live in, and how that can become to some degree a narration of a new experience that you never would have uncovered at a different time. So yeah, I mean, I think that's really it. There was no like real sauce to it. I just it just it's just me. Like I love music. I think that's another thing. Like I have a love for music, not like listening to music. Like the music it's freeing to me. And like I like blasting it, like not a calm, like little chic moment, like you're chilling and you got some jazz bumping. Like, nah, I'm like, get crazy, throw the music on, blaring. My neighbors might hate me, but that's okay. Like stuff like that. And it brings me to another place. And I listen to music so differently than a lot of people, I think, because I dance. Like that, those things played a role in the way I approach a lot. And I'm very attentive and it translates in, I guess, how I speak at times too.
No, I definitely get that. Like I told one of my friends, like I love concerts and like just experiences, and she's like, I don't like them. And I'm like, I think for me, concerts take me to another place and just listening to the
Mm-hmm.
album. It's like you're just
Mm-hmm.
experience like the artist, like just really getting into it and giving you
Mm-hmm.
a show. So it's like I definitely get the music aspect. Um, and I will say, if you do want to add something to your toolkit, I feel like you could be another party where you like write poetry or you just write spoken word because I feel like that's
Okay.
something that you have a talent in. Um,
Okay.
what
Okay.
you kind of answered this, but the last like fun question I have is what do you do for fun? Forget all the professional stuff. What do you like? Are you still hip hop dancing? I know you said you're gaming, but what do you just do
Mm,
to like have fun and just let loose?
what do I do? I like to travel. I love traveling for sure. I think that's my probably top thing. Traveling is just not financially accessible all the time. So what I've incorporated is like smaller scale things, like a road trip somewhere, right? Like, and that could be bigger than somebody too. But I think when I say travel, like I like to like potentially go to the Caribbean or like stuff like that. So like not everything needs to be on this grandiose scale. Like you can take a road trip a couple hours out and it could be fine, and just like chill and exist and be. So like doing things like that, like changing my environment. I think I also we talked about gaming, but I also like just I enjoy nature. Like I like going to a park and being a bum, just like staying around trees, basking in the sun. Because like that's me. I love pools, like being in water. Not New York City beaches though, because we know I ain't trying to come out with no wings. But like any moment I have to just chill in water is like that's a vibe for me. But I guess more accessible, fun things to do like that don't require as much going to exhibits, museums. I'm a foodie. I love a new restaurant. I have a whole map of New York City and like just honestly the whole US I have in a Google map, like all places I've been to. So I'm always down to check out a new food spot. And I would say that and traveling are like number one and two on my list for sure. They might be equal footing.
But you don't think Rockaway Beach is a good beach in New York? No. What?
What's the word? Plead the fifth. That's the phrasing. Yeah.
Okay, I'll give that to you because I do think New York City, like I'm from Florida, so I do get the whole
Mhm.
beach commentary, but I think Rockaway Beach is like a decent, like it gets the job
It's
done.
it's decent, but like I guess and this is unfair, but I'm comparing it to like Cali, the Caribbean, like stuff like that. And like that's not right to do, but like that's where I love the water, you know?
No, I definitely agree with that. Like if we're comparing it to those different places, yes, definitely agree. But I think if we're comparing it to like, let me just get the fix while I'm in New York, it gives the fix.
It don't
No,
be
it doesn't.
busting for me though. It don't be busting for me. I have not been to Rockaway Beach in genuinely more than 10 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
No comment. I'm not gonna push it. It's
Yeah.
okay. But
And
I
in Coney Island, I've walked on the boardwalk.
what? Well, Coney Island, is that really a beach?
I
It's
mean, it's
man-made.
there's sand and there's
There's
water.
sand, but it's flat sand.
I mean, look,
I'm not going to Coney Island to go to the beach. I'm going to Coney Island to like ride a ride, get some like a hot
there's a
dog.
nice beach in Long Island though. I forgot which one it is. It's
If
not.
it is, I've never been.
I forgot what it's called, but there's a nice one in Long Island.
Okay. Because I know when I came time to like my first summer in New York, a lot of people were like, well, don't go to this beach, don't do like to your
Mm-hmm.
commentary, they were like, don't go here, here, here. They were like,
Mm-hmm.
these are your best bets. And Rockaway was the only beach that like got the job done.
Now
Like,
I've heard Rockaway is cool.
yeah,
You know, I haven't been there for a long time, but
it's okay. That's
it's
fine.
all good. It's all
That's,
good.
that's fine. But I do want to thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast. I think
Of
like
course.
this interview, like I've told everyone, like I think like I've known some of these people like only a certain side of them, but doing this interview, it allows me like to just learn so much more and to allow other
Mm.
people to learn more about you. Is there any questions that I didn't ask or anything that you wanted to say?
Um, no, I think you asked everything. You hit the nail on the head. You did the damn thing. Follow me on LinkedIn and Instagram. That's all.
That's what next is what is your social handles for anyone to connect with you?
Yes, on LinkedIn, it's Aaron Francois or Francois. If you are Haitian, you can pronounce it correctly, but it's Aaron, last name Francois. And then on all other social platforms, it's Aaron's Way, Aaron's underscore way. So yeah,
I haven't really been on LinkedIn, but are you like a LinkedIn creator? No.
a creator.
Yeah, like
So some would say. I feel like you got to tune in and find out. That's the special part
oh,
of it,
okay, okay. Well, the links will be in the show notes, so everyone can go and tune in that way. But thank you again so much. I appreciate this a lot.
Of course. Thank you. Later.
Can't wait until the next episode to get your cup filled. Follow us on our social media platforms at Pour Into My Cup on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Pinterest. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast to stay updated when new episodes are released. Leave a review and pour into someone else's cup by sharing the podcast. And I have to ask, is your cup half empty or half full? Peace, love, happiness. Brashiba signing off.